Hello, world. Welcome to the MHFi001 podcast. My name is Carl, and I am here with
Doug Cunnington. How's it going today?
It's going pretty well. It's been a busy morning, but this is pretty relaxing. You have this beautiful studio. I'm seeing it for the first time here, and you know what you're doing. This is, I don't know what half this equipment is, but I trust that you know what you're doing. So
Thanks. I try. I do have a lot of equipment. I don't know how well I use it, but I hope the audio is good. And we did a sound check, so that's really all I can do.
yeah, well, this thing, if I fart, well, the microphone, I'll try to keep that down.
Yeah, well, let's wait until we're about to leave the room.
It is tight confines.
Yeah, and that's amazing. It was only 30 seconds before your first fart joke.
I know. Geez, I did not plan that, I swear. It's better fart joke than a real fart, though.
It is. It is way better. And I guess, what are we doing here? What is this show going to be all about? And we're going to talk about a few of those things. But who are you, Carl?
Yeah, I am an old dude living in Colorado. I discovered financial independence at the age of 37, which I was thinking about this today, Doug. It was 10 years ago. Oh, what happened was I had a bad day at work, and I Googled. I couldn't take my job anymore. It was so stressful. I thought it would actually kill me. I Googled, how do I retire early? And I found our now mutual friend, Mr. Money Mustache, Pete, Longmont local. And I decided to retire early. I decided to journal the whole thing on my blog, which is 1500days.com. That's how long I thought it would take to retire. And I've since retired. It took me, I think I've been done. April will be my 4-year anniversary. And since then, I've been doing all kinds of cool projects. And this right here is the newest and maybe the greatest one. I've been wanting to do a podcast for years. I just, the stars never lined up. And I guess you were one of the stars that lined up. So I appreciate that you asked me to do this. And here we are. How about you, Doug?
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Well, before I talk about myself, I'm curious about just you starting the blog. Did you have a desire to write before? Why did you think, hey, I'm going to start a blog?
Yeah, so way back in college, I always enjoyed writing, but I never knew what I wanted to do with myself. And I thought, hey, I'll be a journalism major. And then I started looking at the job prospects around that. The internet was starting to come online, and I didn't think writing would be a good major, so I pursued biology, chemistry, and eventually fell into computers, which is a long story that no one wants to hear. But the blog allowed my life to kind of come full circle. I did what I loved. It just took me 20 years to get back to that point, and I'm so thankful. There are ads on it. It makes me some money, but for the first 3 years, I think I made $100. So it was a money-losing proposition. But I was doing it, and I still do it for the love of it. I don't need the income anymore. If I didn't love it, I wouldn't do it. So there you have it.
That's awesome. Yeah, for me, I didn't find financial independence until, roughly the same time. I think I was like 35, and I was thinking about that as we were preparing for this chat and this whole podcast. And I kind of did a similar thing. I went the corporate worker bee route. I did some management consulting and kind of honestly, I just kind of coasted. I really didn't make any big decisions. And people said, hey, you should do engineering. Hey, you should do consulting. And then you find yourself a few years later in a job that kind of sucks, but it's not that bad and they pay you pretty well. So pretty hard to turn away from that. Externally, it looks great. Luckily, I got laid off in 2015, and at that point, it was a nice little push to get me started working harder on some side hustles that I just kind of accidentally found. So I didn't have a big interest with entrepreneurship or side hustles or anything like that, but I accidentally found the Smart Passive Income podcast. I ended up starting a blog, figured out how to make a little money, and then slowly over time, after some ups and downs, I figured out how to make a lot more money, and kind of coincided with understanding financial independence. And I think maybe my wife, Elizabeth, found Pete's blog at one point And odd thing, because I'm sort of in like the ground zero area for financial independence bloggers and other folks like that, people are into it around here, And I'd never really dove in. I didn't pay too much attention. I didn't know who you were.
Yeah, that's not a big
but people know you, people know you around here. So I didn't really pay much attention, and just through serendipity and some luck, I ended up living pretty close to, some folks around here in Longmont, and I'm a member at Mr. Money Mustache HQ, which is pretty cool. So I've met a lot more people, and slowly, I mean, there's a lot of common ground between financial independence and I think entrepreneurship. Different sides of the same coin, I think. A lot of the same values, but someone who wants to have a startup is looking at certain pieces, maybe like frugality, and they may think that's crazy and they really want to have a lot more money. But when I step back, I'm a little lazier than some of those folks. So this fits in really well. It fits in well, and I'm rambling on, but I blog over at Niche Site Project. So I also blogged about my process and eventually sold some products and some courses and that kind of stuff. And I still do it today. So it's pretty nice to work for yourself, make your own decisions, and not really have anyone to answer to.
Yeah, and I've got a follow-up question and maybe a comment, but yeah, you're a big deal. You got invited to speak at Google for your work. I mean, I can't think of a bigger honor than that for your line of work, for your niche. But my follow-up question is, you said something that I thought was interesting. You said, luckily I got laid off in 2015. Did you see that coming? I guess this is a two-part question. Did you see that coming? And were you happy with it at the time? Because usually when someone gets laid off or fired, that might be one of the most traumatic things that happen to them in their entire life. And you said luckily.
Yeah. So a couple things. At that point in time, I had listened to a lot of entrepreneurship podcasts and Tim Ferriss podcasts specifically. So I kind of knew that I probably would be better off on my own. And I had made some good money on the side, and I knew it was possible. And I didn't necessarily see it coming, but in hindsight, I can easily connect these dots. So number one, I started delegating a ton. I worked my way up to that middle management area. So I had a team of anywhere from like 6 to 15 people, highly competent folks who also wanted to go up the corporate ladder. And in my industry in consulting, you really couldn't get promoted unless you were doing the job ahead of you, the promotion that you wanted to get. You already had to be doing that and getting paid less. It's just the way they run those things. So I realized my team wanted to do other work. So I delegated like everything that I could. I had so much free time. I also knew that, so that was point number one. Point number two, I ended up doing what I wanted to. So if you want to rock the boat a little bit, they don't like that in the corporate world. So even if you want to make one little change, you have to get approval from like your boss and your boss's boss. And they say, no, we've been doing it this way for 5 or 6 years. There's no reason other than that's the way we've been doing it. So because I had autonomy with my team, I started running little experiments without getting permission. So they didn't really like that once folks started asking questions. Why is this person on your team doing all this stuff? Blah, blah, blah. And then they get upset at you. They get mad and they say, you should ask before you do those things. But as they say, ask forgiveness. And I used up quite a few of those forgiveness tokens. And then finally, I was lucky enough to work remotely. So we traveled a little bit. So we would take like a month-long trip to actually Denver. We were here twice in 2013. We went down to Austin, spent a month there, and we would just be able to work. No one really knew. We didn't advertise it. And then we kind of got a bug in our ass or something. And we thought, we're going to sell our place in Atlanta. And we're going to head out west. We're going to stop in Montana for about 3 months. We're going to move down to Denver. This was 2015. And I didn't tell anyone at my company that we were going to do it until guess what? After we moved, and I said, hey, guess what? I moved to Montana. Wife has a position here, so we're gone. Would love to keep working with you, but let me know. And they said, well, we're going to lay you off. So
Okay.
when you connect the dots, it wasn't a big surprise. And luckily, right, I had a big enough head at that point that I thought, well, you know what? I can do it on my own. If other people can do it, I can do it.
Wow, that's awesome. We'll talk a lot more about financial independence in future episodes. But one thing that I kept thinking of when you were telling your story is a lot of us like our jobs. We just don't like all of it. So I'm sure you like your core engineering work. I'm sure you like your your experiments that you got to do that might have not been approved or management might not have liked so much. And I like being a coder. It was so fun writing code and solving these puzzles, but all the other bullshit that goes along with the job is what's unacceptable, that I have to be here at this physical location. That might not be such a big deal right now, but it'll come back. Having to be online at certain hours, having to answer to bosses who might not be well adjusted. Everyone's worked for a micromanager, and that sucks. Having to work with other difficult people. So, yeah, it sounds like you were the perfect candidate for financial independence. You know what you wanted, and you were mature enough. Were you a saver too? I don't want to.
Yeah, kind of. So, and I'm sure this will be a thread that goes through so many episodes coming up. I was a pretty good saver when I was young, and then you end up hanging out with, people, in college, when you get out of school, and you kind of follow along with what they are doing, which, most people have some credit card debt. So I was starting to spend for no reason. I mean, I didn't have high expenses. I was single, and I ended up, having a little credit card debt, but it never got super out of control. By the time I got married, it was not too bad, but my wife is a very good saver and very financially conservative. So she got me into shape, and I started saving a lot more. And I think it was from 2014 on, we had tracked our net worth, or actually maybe not net worth, but it's more like cash on hand and what we have invested. So we never really considered, our homes and cars. We have very low debt. We have a mortgage on this house, but other than that, we don't really borrow. So overall, we save pretty well. And for a lot of years, I mean, it doesn't really come into play until, you hit your 30s. But those early years when I maxed out the 401k, I mean, you look at those accounts now that I haven't contributed to for a few years, and they're pretty big now.
Yeah.
Compound interest and everything.
Yeah, it's amazing. There's something that I think about frequently, and it's all through my youth, I saved. And in my young adulthood, as soon as I got my first job, I started maxing out all these accounts. But the thing about it was, and the thing that is sometimes difficult for people to wrap their mind around, is you don't really know what you're saving for. In your case, it allowed you to move to another state and tell your job, hey, I'm gone. And you were able to leave that job. And when they said, no, we're laying you off. And me too, when my job became too overwhelming, I was able to leave that job, and I'm in the best health of my life because I had that savings and I was able to get myself out of that situation. But the money could have been just as good for some other reason. Maybe a parent would have had some kind of health issue and I would have had to financially help them. Or who knows, there's good and bad things that money can save you from. It's the ultimate parachute, the ultimate suit of armor in life.
It's a great tool.
Yeah, we'll get more into these conversations later. I have so much stuff I want to talk to you about. I guess this is good.
It's perfect.
Yeah. I could probably talk to you for 8 hours, but okay. Bring me back on track, Doug.
All right. So we're going to talk about goals for the podcast and kind of why we're doing this. And I'll turn it over to you to open it up. So what are some of your goals? And maybe we can do like a back and forth a little bit here.
Yeah, I've listed a couple of them out. Uh, well, one thing with me in the age of COVID is I wear sweatpants and sometimes don't shower for a couple weeks. So because I'll be seeing you, I'll have to wear normal clothes if this is normal and shower regularly. No. I'm just kidding. That one was all bullshit. Uh, I've always been I felt I've always been a poor speaker. Like as a kid, I stuttered, and if you don't have a speech impediment, you probably can't understand this, but words would appear in my head and I couldn't say them. So I remember as a very young kid being an extrovert, like when I was 4, like when we would have show and tell at school, or when we could volunteer to tell the class about what we did for the weekend. I would be the first one to raise my hand and want to run up to the room and tell the class about this. But then I stuttered, and kids will make fun of you and be little assholes. So I kind of became an introverted person after that. I was thinking about something the other day. A lot of people are afraid of public speaking. Like your biggest fear in life is to go speak in front of a crowd. It used to be my biggest fear was to speak at all. I didn't want to open my mouth even just to one other person because I was so afraid the word wouldn't come out, or something would come out malformed or whatever. And I've since been able to, with therapy, as a kid, I've been able to get past most of that. But I still speak too fast and lack confidence. So I hope this podcast turns me into an even better speaker. And even better, that sounds like a shitty thing to say. But I've since improved. I've given public talks, and I'm not so fearful of that. I'm going to do one in front of 1,000 people later this year, which should be interesting. But that's maybe not the most important thing, but one of them. So how about you, Doug?
Yeah, to echo that, just be able to speak better. I have a couple podcasts, or I have a podcast and a YouTube channel. So I've already improved some, but when you go back and you listen to yourself, it's really hard to remove all of the filler words and some verbal tics, even when you're really trying hard. So we may have to help each other out. We can maybe get like a squirt bottle and spray each other.
Yes, or a fly swatter.
Something so we could hurt each other for sure whenever we have a verbal tick. So that's one big thing. And I'll, since I'm taking one of yours, I'm going to go ahead and tell you one of mine. I want to have conversations with smart people, and present company excluded, of course, but no, I'm just kidding. But with smart people, you included, and that's going to be a theme in a second that I'm going to talk about more. But as we've talked about doing the show together, I realized quickly that you have great connections that people wouldn't even reply back to my emails. You can actually get in touch with some of these very smart people. And that's a great advantage. So that's kind of cool. And I may be jumping ahead a little bit there, but the people that we'll be able to talk to and pull information out, understand kind of where they're coming from. And then on top of that, I'm trying to improve my interviewing skills and learn things from people. And I also realized quickly, after we've had some of our other podcasts that we've done together, specific episodes for my show, you're asking great questions too. So it'll sort of pull out even more information because now we have two heads that can ask one smarter person than both of us and get that information.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful point. I was thinking about Charlie Munger the other day. He's Warren Buffett, who is on my shirt. He's Warren Buffett's business partner. I think he's 98 years old now. And one of the quotes I read from him a while ago, but that I'll never forget, one of my favorite quotes of all time, goes something like, you should be ready to burn down any long-held belief you have if you're presented with new and better information. And I think that's incredible. And it speaks to him being a lifelong learner. And I think that's how a good, well-adjusted person is. You see some people who get old and stodgy, and young ones too, who no matter what information you present to them, they further back into their corner. There's nothing you could say to them that would get them to change their mind. And I think that's the wrong way to live. I always want to consider that I could be wrong about anything, even something I've believed my whole life. And similar to what you just said, I hope we pull that out of people. And I hope every time we talk, I'm a little bit better of a person because we talk. And I hope we can teach the audience these things too. through these conversations we have with these really smart people. So yeah, I want to learn, and I want to help the audience to learn too. And I hope we learn from the audience too. I hope people reply to us with great comments, which send us down a new path or give us an idea to do something else or change something that we've believed in.
And I think some people, may view it as like flip-flopping on like an issue or something like that from a political view, which we'll never talk about politics here.
Never.
So yeah, I agree 100%. Obviously it's not hard to agree with Charlie Munger. Pretty good company. So if you have new information, fantastic. Like you can evaluate what you have now versus, what you knew yesterday.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with saying I was wrong.
Yeah.
I want to learn, and I want to help other people learn too. And I hope we do that through this podcast.
Awesome. Well, we do have some sponsors today, which is fun. And the spoiler alert, it's us. We're sponsoring this for the first few shows. So this podcast is brought to you in part by Niche Site Project. That is my blog where I write about affiliate marketing and SEO and a few other things like that. And if you dig podcasts, I have actually 2 interviews with the lovely Carl here on Doug.show. So it's affiliate marketing with Doug Cunnington, and you can find it at Doug.show on the big platforms out there. So what about you? What's your sponsorship?
My sponsor is 1500 Days, which is my blog where I write about financial independence. I write about, and since I've reached financial independence, it's more about what life is like after financial independence and do things I learned, because no matter how much I read about 401ks, Roth IRAs, and everything else, which I've been obsessed with for the past 10 years, I still find that there's still more to learn. So I write about that, sometimes dinosaurs and sometimes fart jokes.
Often fart jokes, often dinosaurs. A lot of dinosaurs. That's cool. And how often do you publish over there? Do you have a regular schedule you try and stick to these days?
At least one day a week I try to do that. As I've become busier in retirement, which was surprising, I find that I have less time to mess around on the blog. But I try for at least once a week on Monday post. What was this Monday's about? Oh, it was about our mortgage experiment. We could have paid cash for our last home, but I got a mortgage and invested the money. So this show is sponsored to you by my post about mortgages, I guess. I just made that up.
That's all right. We'll put a link in the show notes and description so people can check out our stuff.
Cool.
Support those sponsors. All right. Next segment that we're coming up to is why work with each other? Because we don't actually know each other super well. We've hung out, handful of times, went on a couple short hikes in a group setting, had a couple beers, but we're casual friends, I would say.
Yeah, I would say so too. I think we'll learn much more about each other through this, and we'll be hanging out more as COVID comes to an end. I felt like I kind of met you, and then the world went to hell with COVID. So yeah, things should get better pretty quickly. But I think you should go first on this, Doug. I felt like I've gone first the past couple times.
Okay. First off, I let the cat out of the bag earlier. You have the major connections, and that didn't even come to mind initially because, well, that would sound kind of like a jerky thing. I had a target on you. I slowly seduced you over the course of several months.
Boy, that sounds terrible and dirty. And wow, if I disappear after this, look in Doug's basement.
Not in the crawl space, though. Don't even worry about the crawl space. So I didn't even think of it, but then as we brainstormed and you said, oh, we could talk to this person or that person, I realized, oh, well, yeah, we should definitely do that because I would not be able to get those folks to talk to me at all. And it's kind of amazing. Well, I'll leave it at that. So it wasn't that I scoped you out and thought, hey, I'm going for the long con over the course of 18 months or something, but just organically that happened. I have several others too, but that's a big thing that I can't ignore. And I mean, I think you probably know that too, right?
Yeah. Well, I guess I see how it is now. It's cemented. I guess there's no getting out of it now, though. Shit. Yeah. I'll go for my first one. I was thinking about who the best friends are in life, and neither Doug or I are alcoholics, but if you are, the worst friend you can have is someone who brings you over a six-pack every time. You want a friend who's going to make you a better person somehow, in some way. And Doug mentioned that we hadn't talked to each other a ton, but what I remember is that every time I did, I was getting a lot more out of the conversation than Doug. Like, he'd be like, oh, I listened to this podcast and I learned this. I'm like, really? Tell me more about that. And then I'd go home and listen to it. And like one conversation sent my life kind of on a different path with my workouts and diet a little bit. You mentioned that Elizabeth kind of turned you around. She was a saver, so she made you a better person. And I think you're kind of that to me too. I'll learn from you and I'll become a better person because of these conversations instead of you bringing me 6 packs of beer every time. So I appreciate that. I want to surround myself with better people. And the trouble with this is, why does the better person have any incentive to hang out with you? So if you can find someone who's better, who you can learn from, grasp onto them. And I hope I teach Doug some things too, or at least get him some good guests for the podcast.
Well, it's funny. One of us has been fooled by the other, because I also wrote to be around you because you're smart and I can learn. This is going to turn into some sort of a love fest. It's getting weird.
I know the room's heating up. I'm going to move my chair a couple inches away.
So, I mean, I'm pumped to learn from you. You're clearly older than me, and
clearly,
you are older than me. You're 47, right?
That is correct.
Yeah.
How old are you?
I'm 41.
Okay. Wow.
But you get that fine mane of long hair there, so I am jealous of that. I'm bald for the podcast listeners, if you don't know that. So anyway, the point is, I too am looking forward to learning from you. And the good part is, we have our own blind spots, and then we also have areas that we're really good at. So I think it'll be a good complement, both, from the knowledge perspective, just when it's just us two talking, and then, yeah, just in general, I think it'll work out well.
Cool.
So, yeah. Another cool thing that is just a personal thing, which I guess it also ties in on why I want to work with you too. I was becoming more interested in financial independence and the personal finance space because it's different than what I've been doing. So I've been talking about affiliate marketing and SEO, and that's all fine. I've been successful there. And once you do some things for a little while, if you're content and you're not going deeper into whatever the topic is, it gets a little boring, unfortunately. And it's up to me, right, to keep it interesting. So I just decided I didn't want to be as deep in that world. Now I'm still doing, 2 shows per week on my other podcast and have a standing YouTube live stream that I do. But at the same time, I wanted to explore different areas, and the FI community that I've met so far has been awesome, really fun to hang around the folks, and very, very welcoming overall. Of course, I mean, you always have your, not the bad seeds, but you always have people that are super opinionated and that kind of thing. But overall, the FI community has been awesome, and there's so many cool people around here. So this was a good pull into that area, because when you start something new and you're just doing it on your own, and you have the kind of flexibility that you and I have, it's really easy to quit stuff once you get a little bored. We're going to move forward with this. This is a long-term project. So I think having us chained together to figure out how to keep moving forward with it is a good thing to follow through with what we're intending on doing here.
Chained together, that sounds like another dirty reference to what's going on in your basement, where now you know why we'll never record from Doug's basement. Have you ever seen Pulp Fiction? I'm just kidding. I kid. Doug's basement is perfectly innocent. We were just down there. Yeah. And that brings up what I just said, brings up another reason why I was eager to do this podcast with you. I could talk about this kind of stuff with anyone, but if you read my blog, I would say it's the purest expression of my personality. In real life, I'm probably a 13-year-old in an adult body. It's fun to be fun to tell jokes and not take life seriously, and to say an occasional bad word. And I think the first time I talked to Doug on his podcast, you said a bad word. I'm like, wow, that's how it's going to be. And I like it. So I felt like I could be more real with Doug and have fun because you can talk about, you should save your 401k. The limit is $19,000 a year. And I'd put you to sleep within like 3 seconds if I'm not doing that already. But with Doug, hopefully we can spice it up a little bit and make a conversation about a 401k not super boring and actually have some fun and have some fun with our guests too, which is my next reason. But I'll wait for you to tell you about that till I hear your next one.
So, and I think I have one more sort of major one. It's another sort of, I guess, a very sincere one, but we don't know each other that well. And I just moved here a couple years ago. I don't have a lot of close friends, and I know with the conversations we're going to have and all the time that we're going to spend together, we're going to become good. Well, I hope we're going to become good friends because we're going to be spending some time together and having conversations. But it's a great way to, as adults who, we're not in college, we're not forced to hang out with people. We don't have jobs. We're not sort of in those constraints. So I know the closest friends that I've had over the years, usually I either worked with them in some capacity or had some reason to be around them quite a bit. Otherwise, it's really easy to get busy. You have your family, you have other things you could do. You could even, in this sort of time of quarantine, it's really easy to just sit at home too and keep binging on Netflix or whatever. So I'm looking forward to that, just to get to know you better and be friends with you.
Yeah, that's such a great point, Doug. I really appreciate you saying that because I feel the same way. Just thinking on it now, my two closest friends are both from work and none of them live anywhere near me. They're both over 1,000 miles away and I really enjoy my time with them, but it's few and far between. And in the age of COVID, a lot of people that I hung out with have fallen away and it's become awkward in some situations. I'm not sure if those relationships are ever going to be what they were, and who predicted that would come out of the pandemic. Lots of shitty things have come out of it. But yeah, that's great, Doug. I look forward to hanging out with you more and drinking your beer. Doug makes good beer. Yeah, that's an awesome one. The last one, what I was going to say is I do talk to a lot of people in the financial independence community, and whenever I hear these people interviewed, people always ask them the same exact questions, like Mr. Money Mustache, tell me how I should invest my money, or Jim Collins, tell me about your stock series and why index funds are the right thing to do. I think those are important questions, but they've been asked hundreds of times already. I look forward to interviewing these people, and on a little bit deeper level, I'd like to ask J.L. Collins about his life and how he thinks how his book has changed him. Because I think there's things that a lot of people have never asked. These people like Jim Collins or Pete, and I think we could get some new, interesting information out of them. What they have to say, their main message is important, but I'd like to talk to them on a little bit more personal level. And I think we could do that. And yeah, I think it'll make for some really fun conversations. So I'm really looking forward to doing that. There's questions I've wanted to ask Pete since I've met him, and this will be the perfect venue to do it, even though I've known him for like 7 or 8 years now.
Right. It's funny how that is. I've had some folks on my shows where, again, like you said, you've known them for a while, but you don't normally ask those questions because it would be really weird to do it in a normal social setting. So if you're given the venue to actually do it, it works out. It works out much better. And those questions are not weird because it's in the context of a podcast.
Yep.
So yeah. And I think, I'm right there with you too. I occasionally have gotten obsessed with a certain guest or something like that, or a certain personality. And then I'll check out all their podcast interviews that they've done. And yeah, a lot of times you just get the same questions over and over again. Sometimes, unfortunately, if the interviewer isn't engaging and they're just kind of phoning it in, you end up, unfortunately, with that personality getting bored, and you could tell because they're not having a fun time with the whole conversation. So
Yeah, we could take it to a deeper level. I was listening to a podcast this weekend. The Elon Musk was being interviewed, and the interviewer, who's a big guy and a good guy, he's smart, but I don't want to say his name because it feels bad, but he'll be able to figure it out. He didn't know that SpaceX landed rockets, and I would think anyone who would want to watch that interview is probably obsessed with Elon Musk and knows that that's one of the fundamental accomplishments of that guy's lifetimes. So instead of asking superficial stuff, it'd be fun to get in deep with these people. So I look forward to that.
And it reminds me, this is a weird tangent, but Jerry Seinfeld was being interviewed by Larry King after Seinfeld, the TV show, was off the air, right? They took it off. And, sorry, Jerry stopped. That's an important piece of context. So Larry King asked Jerry and says, so was the show canceled? What happened? And of course, right? Did you watch Seinfeld? Were you a big fan? Or?
I wasn't a huge fan,
okay,
but I'm definitely familiar with it. And I knew when it went off the air. I mean, that was,
right.
You'd have to have your head in.
Right. So, and for the people that don't know, Jerry Seinfeld famously decided, hey, we're done. And it was 9 seasons. It was great, but we're going to leave on top. So Jerry sort of flipped out and he was like, you don't know? Like, is this a serious question? I don't know if he was really upset, but I think at the end he was saying, get this guy my resume, like talking about Larry King. So who's obviously a good interviewer in some capacity, but yeah, he maybe should have checked that out.
Yeah, done a little research ahead of time.
Check that out. So anything else as far as goals or why we're working together on this?
Yeah, as far as goals, I was thinking about this on the way over here. So maybe the foundation, the base of this podcast will be financial independence, but there's so much more to it than that. I think money and financial independence is a starting point in life. Like once you save your money and can quit your job, what happens then? You might decide to stay at your job. If you would work at your job for free, why ever leave if it brings you that much contentment and happiness to your life? I don't think most people would. If you offer most people $10 million to leave their job, they would leave. So I think a lot of this podcast will be, I hope, what happens after you reach financial independence and the decisions you make. It's worked out in ways I never expected. I'm in the best health of my life. I'm 47, old, as Doug pointed out. Doug, I'm old enough to be your dad. Not really. That's disturbing. But anyway, I'm in the best shape of my life, and I never saw that coming. I could never do more than 1 pull-up before I retired. Now I can do, I got back up to 8 yesterday. I messed up my shoulder, but now it's better. So yeah, I'm in the best shape of my life. I'm not overweight anymore like I was before I quit. I have lower blood pressure, so I'm going to live longer because of financial independence. I never saw that coming, but any smart person would know that sitting behind a desk typing on a keyboard for 8 hours a day isn't good for your health. And so, yeah, I went off on a tangent there, but yeah, I want to talk about life after financial independence, what we do, our diet, our workouts, and what other interesting people are doing with their time after they stop working, and our lives, how we've improved and what we're working on.
I luckily, like normal, I agree 100%. And I think that's important to note too. Financial independence and some of the personal finance ideas, it's going to be an ongoing thread here, but I know we're both into fitness and other things and other hobbies. And to that point, post FI, what do you do? As I mentioned, I'm still working, and it's on my stuff and I have a lot of autonomy, but I also am kind of experiencing an existential crisis because it's like, I can work on whatever I want. So I better make sure I'm spending my time on things that I care about and that I enjoy. So I'm looking at everything and trying to figure that out. And my wife still works too, right? We're not in a big hurry to, quit working or anything like that. She enjoys what she does. She has a good team that she's working with. So all those kind of things. And on top of that, luckily, I did talk to a few of my friends, and they are interested in post-Fi topics because there's a lot of content on people that are in pursuit of Fi, but there's not as much information like what the heck are you doing? Of course, you're still blogging and you're keeping people up to date, but I think there's room for us to talk more about that. And I guess now that I said it out loud, it is purely self-indulgent in some ways where we'll just talk about the stuff we're doing and what we're into and how we're spending our time and energy.
Yeah. I look forward to not being tied to any certain format too. I envision on future episodes, we might have a panel discussion maybe at the Mr. Money Mustache HQ when interesting people come into town. So I think the format will mostly be this or interviewing people, but this will be wherever we want it to go.
And I was thinking too, because this is a beautiful day outside, if we can get some of the equipment out to record outside occasionally, that would be great. Yeah. I'm not sure in the neighborhood because they're doing, it's kind of noisy around here, but we may go on a field trip up to like a state park or something like that. We could sit by a lake and have Long's Peak in the background, stuff like that.
Ooh, I have a pool in the backyard. We can do a pool cast. Just don't drop the microphone in the water. That would be bad.
We'll have to get some of those like Madonna wireless headphone things. You know what I'm talking about? Like the
yeah.
Is that?
Yeah, maybe
headsets. Yeah.
Oh man, but if we have bathing suits on, that would probably turn half the viewership off. At least for me. I don't know about you, but yeah, everyone would tune out. Maybe get black bars over my body.
Yeah. I think it'll attract a different audience. I think people will still be interested, but not the people that we thought.
Expect.
Yeah. So, okay. I think that's it for some of the main topic areas. We do have a segment where we will talk about cool new things, and then we're going to kind of riff on other segments that we might do. So I'll go first for the cool new things. I did purchase a new recorder, which I don't think I told you. It's the one we're recording on right now.
Cool.
And it has the capability to have 4 microphones plugged in and 4 headphones. So my old one, it kind of capped out at 2, and this is the new Zoom P4 Podtrack or Podtrack P4. So it's perfect for exactly what you talked about, like do a panel at HQ or, maybe at FinCon or some other events that we're going to show up at later this year.
Okay, cool.
So I'm really happy with it. It's the first time that I've used it, and yeah, it has all the things that I need, and it was relatively inexpensive. I got it. I'm a big proponent of used gear, so I got it on eBay, $150. A little cheaper than a brand new one, but it was new in box. So I don't know if these people stole it or if it was an open box, but I got a pretty damn good deal on it.
When you said recorder, I thought you were gonna pull off that instrument they give to like 5th graders. My younger child's a 5th grader. I thought you were gonna pull out that thing and play hot cross buns or something like that. So I'm glad it was that recorder and not the one I was thinking of. Just kidding. Yeah. One thing I bought recently that was unexpectedly better than I thought it would be was a rowing machine. Mindy and I were going to the health club here in Longmont, our rec center, pretty frequently. Like right when COVID started, we had this really good rhythm, and then that shut the world down. And I really liked the rowing machine, so I started looking them up online, and the main company that builds them, I can't remember their name now, but they all cost like $1,000, and there was a waiting list to buy them. And the used ones were actually going for more money than the new ones because you didn't have to wait 12 weeks to get one. You could just go over to someone's house and buy them. So those were going for a premium. So I didn't want to wait that long. I scoured the internet. There's certainly not a lot of information on rowing machines. So I found one that had a lot of good reviews. It was $200. I didn't expect much. I was very skeptical of it, but it showed up and it's been wonderful. I just did a bunch of rows with it this morning. It's been it's not as good as the professional one you would get at the health club, but it's not 20% as good. It's probably 80% good as the fancy one they have at the health club. So I've been very happy with that. It's good to be able to continue your workouts in the age of a pandemic when the world's a little bit different and what you had available is no longer available.
Especially, it's been a little chilly over the winter because a lot of times you can get outside and it's not too bad. You can do something out there, walk around, jog, something. But it's been really chilly and it's not fun to run when it's 10 degrees and windy.
No, it sure is not.
So, all right, nice. And we do have some other segment ideas and we didn't sync up on this. So this is going to be new for each of us here. So what were some of your segments you thought of?
Yeah, I thought one thing we could do is maybe one new thing we learned in the past week. We're going to record about every week. So one thing we learned, or maybe one interesting fact we discovered, or just something like that. Maybe something that we've improved upon with ourselves, something we've discovered, just some way we've made ourselves better in the past 7 days.
Awesome. I had that one too. I also noted kind of hand in hand if we're reading anything specific. So I'm almost always reading 1 to 2 books, one fiction, one nonfiction. So occasionally I'll probably throw in something there if there's a thing that's interesting within those books.
Ooh,
so,
can you tell us what you're reading now? Or?
Yes. So I'm reading a book called, I can't remember the series. It's by Keith McCafferty. So this is a fiction book. And Keith McCafferty lives in Bozeman, Montana, which is where we used to live. I didn't read any of his books when we were living there, but the cool thing is his book series, which is the Sean Stranahan series. So that's how people can find it. I like it because it's set in a place called Bridger, which is not Bozeman, but it's kind of like the fake version of it. And there's the Bridger Mountains. Those are the mountains you can see from Bozeman. So it's kind of cool because he'll reference certain areas which I know actually exist, and certain canyons and hikes and roads and that kind of thing. So I get a little nostalgic to read about places where I've lived or visited, and they are actual places. So sometimes in the book, Sean, who's the character in the book, will be driving from Bozeman over to Big Sky and then hop over to West Yellowstone and go into the park, which people can't see all the pictures, but I have pictures of Yellowstone like all around the room and office here. So, and obviously the podcast listeners cannot see those pictures, but I have some photos. Really love Yellowstone, love the time in Bozeman and in Montana. So that is one of the books that I'm reading.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I've always found we were in Maine a couple years ago, and rereading all the Stephen King books are set in Maine. So when you read the book and the setting is something you're familiar with, you can always appreciate it and enjoy it a little bit more.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's pretty cool. So another segment idea is get to know Doug and Carl, where we just ask each other questions, like maybe a number of siblings or some basic questions, and slowly we'll be able, it's like an icebreaker for us to get to know each other.
yeah, it's a great one.
Veiled inside of
I
a
like
segment.
it. See, now I'm happy that we did this podcast. Not that I was ever unhappy, but it gets better every minute.
Great. That's probably the best one, because I think that can go on and on for like so many episodes too.
Sure.
So yeah. Any others that you had?
One off the top of my head is if we've read like maybe something short form, like a good blog post, if we've read something in the past week, and it doesn't have to be about personal finance or money, just something we've read that we'd like to tell the listeners about and encourage them to check out. That could be another segment.
Perfect. And the final one that I have is a Q&A segment. So sometimes I think we could probably do like a whole show, a mailbag episode where people send in questions, and we haven't chatted yet, but I'll set up a voicemail box so people can send in audio questions if they want to. But yeah, we can do Q&A segments at the end, especially, I mean, let's say we end up chatting with Pete, for example, and someone has a question that they want to get to Pete that they wouldn't, I mean, there's not many channels to get directly to Pete, right? So we would potentially be able to wedge that into our interview and that kind of thing. So
that's a good one. Do we have an email address yet?
I'll set up that stuff. Not yet. Yeah.
Okay. See, I know why I agreed to do a podcast with Doug. He's doing the heavy lifting at the moment. I appreciate that, Doug.
Yeah, you're
I
just the
appreciate
talent,
you.
the sexy talent showing up here. Bright shirt.
Eliminate sexy and talent, and the rest is all correct.
Awesome. Well, anything else you could think of?
Yeah, I'm more excited to do this than ever. I can't wait to record our next episode. Let's get on it. And how can we help you?
Yeah, I think for the final wrap up here, I know I want to have an active email list, and maybe I channeled your juvenile brain, and number one, we got Mile High Fi. Pretty solid name. Pretty happy with that. We're working on getting some of the details in order on that. But I also want to call our email list the Mile High Fi Club. So you can go to this domain, it's milehighfi.club, and then it'll redirect you so that you can sign up for our email list, and then we will be sending out some, kind of weekly emails, and whenever we're putting out a new episode. So it'll just be a way for us to contact you fine listeners and viewers directly, and you'll know when new episodes are coming out, and we'll just send out, not spammy stuff, but just interesting things like all the stuff we've been talking about today.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. I love the URL that you came up with. That, again, was Doug. So Doug is doing the heavy lifting. I hope to someday be able to contribute 25% as much as Doug is currently contributing. Thank you, Doug.
Oh, man. You're welcome. Thanks for saying that. And I'll end on a dig on my wife. I think that could be part of another segment. I don't think she's listening, so I can actually say it. But the domain name is such a good idea that she said, "Did I come up with that name?" She tried to take credit for it. I was like, "Come on, dude. I don't have that many good ideas, and especially about branding. That's kind of not my thing at all." So
I don't know, Doug. Maybe you should have just let her have that one.
That's the wisdom of a 47-year-old coming out right there. Yeah, I was like, "No, man, I'm taking credit for that one." So, all right,
Nice.
That's awesome. Well, any parting words?
I think that's it. I'm going to go dig some holes this afternoon. I'm not selling the fire life with that comment, but digging holes in the backyard is still better than answering to a pointy-haired boss stuck in your office when it's a beautiful 65-degree day here in February in Colorado. So I'm really, really excited to be outside digging those holes. And yeah, we'll have more to say about fire life down the road, but I'm never going back to work, Doug, except for this podcast. But this is hardly work. If it felt like work, I wouldn't do it.
It's going to be fun, man. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it better be fun.
All right, man. We'll catch you on the next episode.
Okay, see ya.